Hello, this is Professor Michael, and this week we are talking about procedures and triggers in the database. So last week we talked about scripts, and you can script a lot of things that you want to do in a database that you may want to repeat so that you can run it either from a SQL command window or from within SQL Server Management Studio. This week we're talking about procedures and triggers, things that exist within the database so that they can be run at any time and they can manipulate the data in your database and they can be a part of a database application. I'm going to go through a very simple example on how to create a trigger and show you how that trigger runs within a database. So here I created two tables. I created a table personal budget, and here I'm just recording a bill name, an amount of the bill, the account that I used, and the date. And I also have this personal account table that has money in, money out, and current total. I didn't relate them through a foreign key, and I'm not using joins. Let's say that I want to keep these separate, and I do want to keep the current total updated though in personal account when something in the personal budget changes. So I can do things on tables with triggers. So there's several different triggers that you can use. One is an after insert trigger. That means after something has been, a record has been inserted into a given table, you can execute commands. So what I chose to do is create this procedure, create trigger. Let's go into this one. Okay, so I created this, and if you double click on it down here, you can kind of see the SQL Server view of the create trigger. I'm using the budget database, and this is an alter statement, which would alter my trigger to my current code. But when I do a create trigger statement, I have create trigger, the name of the trigger, on a given table. So mine is an after insert trigger. That's how you define that. And then the as, what comes after the as is the code that will execute, kind of like a procedure. So I'm declaring three variables here of type small money. And this is a special thing with a trigger. On insert of a trigger, you can get to the record that was inserted on the table. So I can get the values from that record. So in my insert statement, here, I have insert into personal budget bill. The value is Cincy bill. Amount 17. So when this record gets inserted, I want something to happen. So before we go through the whole trigger, let me run this. So I'm just going to highlight this row and click F5. Now it says that one row was affected in one table and one row was affected in another, even though this was just an insert into one table. So let's see what actually happened here. Okay, so you'll notice that here, this is the table that I actually inserted into, and this is the record I inserted, and my amount was $17. Here, however, this is my personal account table. Money in is nothing, money out is 17 because the amount is 17, and the current total is now $960, which is the current total minus this money out. So I'm keeping track of how much money I have. So let's go back here. So I have decided to get the amount from inserted. Again, that's the record that was inserted. So that would be the $17, and that gets stored in a variable at money out. Here I have the current total from the personal account table, which is not the table that the record was inserted into, and I'm storing that in the current total. and that would be the $977. And then I'm setting the variable total to current total minus money out. So that would be 977 minus 17 in this instance. And then what I want to do is insert into the personal account table my values. So there's no money in, but I am selecting the amount from inserted, the record that was inserted, $17, and then I'm storing at total. Now, this might look a little weird to you. I'm trying to show you the different ways that you can get the values. Store them either in a variable, maybe do some transactions against those variables, or select them directly from the inserted record or from another table. So that's how when I insert into personal budget here, I get a record in personal account. Now, that's a quick example on how to create a trigger. When you go through it, when you're creating one from scratch, you just want to open up a new query window. Make sure you're in the database that you want to use, either through this drop-down or using the use command, use budget. And then you want to create the trigger. And decide when you want to execute that trigger. I decided to do an after insert. You can do after update. You can do before insert. You can go through the book and see all of the different kinds of triggers that you can have, but you could probably guess based on those values what you can have a trigger on. When you declare your procedure on what you want to do, you should start with the simplest example. So just try to select from a record. Just try to get that inserted value. That would be the first thing to do. Also, when you create the trigger, they are listed under the triggers table in the table that they are on. So your trigger is on a table. So when you refresh this, if it's already expanded, remember to do that, you'll see your trigger here. I hope this was helpful. The assignment this week requires you to create a trigger. You will create two tables, at least two tables, and then create a trigger on one that will manipulate the other table based on the values. Thank you very much.